Discover the amazing moment a lone rancher paid 3x for a widow's forgotten Christmas basket. Hank Matthews stood outside the old barn, the sun peeking over the horizon and seeping into the brittle air. A small sign hung crookedly. Mrs. Hale's barn sale. He felt a tug of nostalgia, the kind that coiled tightly in his chest. Memories of holiday gatherings swirled in his mind, a warm glow from the fireplace, laughter echoing off the walls. This winter felt different, like a weight pressing on his shoulders. The ranch was struggling, and his mother's absence left a chilling silence. Would she have wanted things to turn out this way? Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside, greeted by the scent of dried pine and dust. There were trinkets stacked high, painted wooden toys, faded linens, and ornaments that whispered tales of yesteryears. As he sifted through, a beautiful basket caught his eye, brimming with handcrafted ornaments and delicately woven crafts. Heart racing, he grasped it, its intricate details reminding him of his mother's triumphs in creating warmth on cold winter nights. Yet the price gnawed at his mind. He hesitated, feeling a foreboding sense of his own foolishness. 3 times its worth? It was madness. But the trembling of his heart bore more than mere nostalgia. It was longing for connection. Torn between fiscal caution and the spirit of the season, he relented, offering Mrs. Hale an amount that felt reckless against his dwindling finances. "Are you sure about that, Hank?" she asked, a knowing look in her eyes, but he could only nod, ignoring the prick of doubt. As he left the barn, the woven basket nestled in his arms felt lighter than the burden of town gossip that would soon follow. He expected whispers, but nothing could prepare him for the sting of ridicule. "Foolish, I tell you," snickered Buck, the town's mechanic, arms crossed and lips curled in disdain. Overpaying for some old widow's junk? Hank's gut twisted, frustration boiling beneath the surface. How could they not see the value beyond the dollar sign? The laugh of his mother rang faintly in his ears, remembering how she basked in generosity. But these scornful stares felt like arrows, piercing through his resolve. He clenched his fists. Should he care what they thought? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Reeling from the scorn, he discovered something hidden at the bottom of the basket, an old letter from Mrs. Hale. As he unfolded it, his heart raced with the vulnerability laid bare within. Her ink scratched against the paper, detailing the loss of family connections and the aching void of abandonment. The words clawed at his insides, their shared struggle reverberating in his chest. Hank's determination surged. The weight of his choice twisted inside him, merging compassion with desperation. Should he confront the deep-seated cynicism in the town? Would they destroy what fragile thread connected them? He felt the tension curling tighter, a knot in his gut as he envisioned proposing a holiday gathering, one that felt out of reach with every negative glance aimed his way. And then the photograph arrived, an old image of his mother and Mrs. Hale, shadows cast long over a winter's afternoon. What truth hovered around this simple moment? It pulled at him, heavier than before, stirring the waters of doubt. What if honoring his mother meant uncovering secrets buried deep within the town? What if honoring her legacy meant risking everything? Hank stood in his small kitchen, the sunlight spilling across the wooden tabletop, illuminating the old photograph he had placed there. The image captured a warm moment, his mother's joyful smile radiating alongside Mrs. Hale's gentle gaze. The picture stirred something deep within, awakening a flicker of hope amidst the heavy uncertainty nesting in his heart. What if this was the key he needed, the connection he yearned to restore in a community fractured by indifference? He felt compelled to act, yet doubt crept in. What if they rejected him again? The ridicule from Buck still echoed in his mind. Rising from his chair, he paced the room, the wooden floor creaking under his weight as if echoing his inner turmoil. It was one thing to confront the town's cynicism, but could he risk his vulnerabilities for the sake of what? Friendship. Belonging. Hank, he muttered to himself, shaking his head. You won't know unless you try. The words felt like uncharted territory, and suddenly, a plan began to form. If the town had lost its spirit of kinship, perhaps he could rekindle it. A gathering, yes. That was the answer. A simple invitation might draw out the laughter and stories. Gradually, the blood coursed stronger through his veins, and he felt emboldened by the power of connection. Grabbing a notepad, Hank set about drafting invitations, his mind swirling with colorful visions of families coming together, sharing old tales and warm food. He picked each word carefully, channeling his mother's nurturing essence. He evoked memories of laughter shared around the table, the joys of community that had seemed all but lost. But with each stroke of the pen, anxiety twisted tighter. He couldn't shake the nagging sense of impending failure. What if the townsfolk didn't want to come? What if they turned their backs on him once more? A harsh reminder of Buck's scornful laughter reverberated like an ominous drum, pacing through the tight confines of his mind. No, stop! He scolded himself, slapping the flat of his palm against the table. He focused on the letter, the ache in Mrs. Hale's words reminding him of their shared struggles. With determination rekindled, he thrust forward, pouring his heart into the invitations and addressing each envelope meticulously. When the sun began to sink into the horizon, painting the skies with hues of gold and crimson, Hank took a deep breath and stepped outside. The air was crisp but invigorating, rekindling the spirit that had dimmed under the weight of isolation. He strolled through town, hand-delivering the invitations, each encounter a test of faith and courage. Yet, he couldn't ignore the glances that followed. Some were curious, others bemused. Faces turned away, and whispers skated through the air like whispers of autumn leaves. Each rejection clawed at him, but still, he pressed on, his determination forged from the vulnerability that had driven him to create that beautiful connection in the first place. As the last invitation slipped from his fingers, an all-too-familiar feeling washed over him. Despair. Perhaps he could have cared less about those whispers, but doubt gnawed at his resolve. His heart sank, clenching tightly around a new realization. Not only was he pursuing the risky endeavor of uniting a community, he was rediscovering the essence of himself. At that moment he spotted a figure outside the diner. Mrs. Hale sat with a few others, laughter echoing and attracting light like moths to fire. Would they come to his gathering? Would they finally see him through a lens of shared experience instead of judgment? His breath hitched in uncertainty as a final thought struck him. He was not only inviting them, he was inviting himself back into the world. With renewed purpose, he turned to head home, his heart echoing like a drum. What would it take for his effort to resonate? Would his actions yield warmth and connection, or would they only deepen the divide? As night descended, uncertainty lingered like a thick fog. One thing was certain. A storm was brewing in his heart. It was time to confront the very essence of his fear, to see if he could finally transcend their scorn. But as he rounded the corner, he spotted a figure lurking in the shadows, arms crossed, a scowl etched on his face. The moment for confrontation had arrived. Hank's heart raced as he approached the figure, caught between a surge of adrenaline and creeping dread. The shadow emerged from the depths of the alley, and it was unmistakably Buck. Confidence swirled like a tempest in Hank's chest, battling the years of intimidation that had been etched into his psyche. This was no longer a boy cowering under the weight of another's disdain. He was a man determined to unearth possibilities where barriers once stood. "What do you want, Hank?" Buck's voice was laced with condescension, an arrogant smirk barely concealed by dim streetlight. Each word dripped like poison, but a flicker of something unexpected ignited within Hank. He was painfully aware of the distorted history they shared, but this was different. "I want you to come to my gathering," he stated, his voice steady despite the tremors beneath. The very act of putting the invitation before Buck felt revolutionary, extending a hand rather than retreating into a shell of shame. You expect me to show up to something you've organized? Buck laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed off the brick walls. What's it going to be? Another chance for you to fail gloriously? Hank swallowed, fighting the heat rising to his cheeks. Each rejection from Buck had stung, but now he found that vulnerability could be weaponized into strength. I'm not afraid of failing anymore, Buck. I'm doing this for me. And maybe I'm hoping, just maybe, that you'd want to be there too. For a moment, Buck's gaze flickered between amusement and something like uncertainty. This was a man accustomed to wielding rejection like a sword, but the power of Hank's vulnerability hung in the air. It should have felt like an invitation for Buck to slice through, to humiliate Hank as he had so many times before. But boredom mixed with curiosity shaded his features. You trust the town to rally around you? Buck challenged, his voice quieter, the bravado faltering. You think that they'll just forget how people see you? Hank stood taller, a surge of resolve coursing through him. This isn't about them. It's about me reconnecting to something I lost, the sense of belonging, of community. If they choose to see me differently, that's their call. The words felt like a shield, a newfound realization that he didn't need their validation, only the courage to accept himself. Buck's smirk faltered further, confusion clouding his judgment as Hank pressed on. You might not get it, Buck, but this matters. Even if nobody shows up, I need to know I tried. Each syllable released the weight from Hank's shoulders, the lightness of self-acceptance that he was beginning to grasp. And what if no one comes? Buck replied, probing deeper, an echo of old wounds. Then I'll learn from it, Hank said firmly. Failure is part of the journey, but at least I'll know I took a step. Don't you want to take a chance beyond your fear? We've spent too long in this cycle. There it was, the heart of the matter. Would Buck continue his reign of belittlement, or would he reflect on his own choices? The daunting truth danced in front of them, the tangled web of their past challenging them to break free. Silence fell as Buck seemed to digest Hank's words, an unexpected flicker of contemplation softening his demeanor. Just when Hank thought he'd reached some kind of breakthrough, Buck scoffed again, steps retreating into the shadows. I'll think about it, but don't hold your breath. He turned, leaving Hank in a whirlwind of uncertainty and possibility. As Hank stood there, heart racing, clarity flooded his mind. It wasn't just about confronting Buck, it was about confronting himself, every doubt and fear that haunted him. In this moment, he could feel the first glimmers of growth jutting through the soil of his heart, breaking free of the shadows they had cast for so long. But when he finally resumed his walk home, the lingering tension twisted within him. Would Buck really think about it, or had Hank merely stirred the pot of resentment further? He felt the ghosts of their troubled past gnawing at him. There was so much to unpack, both in their history and within himself, and, as he crested the hill toward home, the sky darkened with impending storms and a sense of dread washed over him. What if those whispers he once feared turned out to be truths? What if the confrontation with Buck had never truly been about Buck at all? The weight of unanswered questions settled deep within him, and with each step Hank could feel the storm ready to burst. Could he truly shift his own narrative? Or would he stand on the precipice, uncertain whether to leap into the unknown, where the only way out was through? The following morning, Hank awoke to the oppressive weight of the storm that had loomed over him the night before. The air felt charged, a lingering tension that mirrored the chaos of his thoughts. In the quiet of his modest home, he sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee cooling before him as he stared off into the distance. Had he really meant what he'd said to Buck? The echoes of their conversation reverberated through his mind, each word layered with significance. It was more than just a challenge to Buck. It was an invitation to himself. He had been at the mercy of others for too long, defined by their judgments rather than his own convictions. With each sip of coffee, Hank wrestled with this realization, confronting the discomfort it brought. He stood pacing back and forth, the worn wooden floor creaking beneath his weight. An idea took shape, a small gathering of his own, not for validation, nor solely for Buck, but a true communion of ideas. Inspired by the desire to connect with himself and push beyond personal barriers, he envisioned an informal meeting of locals, a space to share stories, experiences, and perhaps even fears. As the hours passed, Hank began organizing in earnest. He pulled out his notebook, its pages filled with disjointed thoughts and dreams, and began outlining what this gathering would mean. It would be a place of authenticity, where no one had to play roles, where laughter was welcome but so were tears. The thought of creating such an atmosphere ignited something deep within him, a streak of creativity he hadn't recognized before. Yet with each stroke of the pen, doubt surged like floodwaters. Who would come? What if he opened up his heart only to see it dismissed? Memories of ridicule from his past clawed at him, but each painful recollection became a stepping stone for growth. Hank understood this process was not about perfection but about being real, about fostering vulnerability as a shared human experience. Feeling an unsettling mix of empowerment and apprehension, he called a few friends. Eclectic souls connected less by social status and more by shared experiences of feeling out of place. Their responses echoed with encouragement, igniting a sliver of hope in him. The first two confirmations came eagerly, revealing a longing in others for connection and camaraderie. As he prepared for the gathering, Hank's thoughts drifted again to Buck, still nestled in the shadows of his mind. What would it take to truly confront their history? A gnawing need to push boundaries flickered within him. It was not just about Buck's choice to attend. It was about Hank's willingness to give his past a voice, to step outside of the narrative that had kept him confined for so long. Standing before the mirror, Hank practiced what he would say, the words a balm to his nerves. "I won't be the guy you trampled on, Buck. I won't sit back and wait for your approval." Each run-through brought a rush of adrenaline, the fear morphing into an electric blend of excitement and dread. But uncertainty lingered. What were the implications of this newfound assertiveness? Would Buck retaliate in ways he hadn't anticipated? The intricate web of consequences darted around his mind, and that question loomed larger than before. With the gathering only days away, Hank felt both liberated and burdened by his choices. He had staked a claim on a path forward, but the specter of Buck haunted him as he tried to reconcile the past with this future he was cautiously trying to carve. As he settled into a restless sleep that night, his thoughts became entangled with what would happen next. Struggling with the notion of potential rejection, an unsettling sense of anticipation mixed with the thrill of empowerment. He was on the brink of something transformative, feeling the ground shift beneath him. The only question remained: would Buck emerge as an ally or an adversary in this next chapter of Hank's journey? Hank awoke the next day to the sound of rain pattering against the window, a steady rhythm that echoed the internal tumult he felt. The storm outside had intensified overnight, mirroring the brewing tempest within him. With his heart racing, he recalled his fleeting moments of bravery, the decision he had made to embrace a more authentic version of himself. After a quick breakfast, he descended into his cluttered workspace. The passion to write took over. His notebook was open, pages sprawled with half-formed thoughts and innate fears, the ink flowing as his fingers raced across the paper. In the front of his mind was the looming gathering only 2 days away, a self-imposed deadline that both thrilled and terrified him. He paused to consider how to articulate his intention, to create a safe space for discussion. Why was connection so vital? This wasn't just about the intimate sharing of experiences. It was about challenging the societal masks everyone wore, including his own. Hank wanted those attending to feel the liberation that came from honest expression, like he had felt born from this project, tempted to let go of the past. Yet the thought of Buck loomed larger, and burst through his mind like an unwelcome guest. In the past, Buck had a way of showing up uninvited just when Hank had begun to feel secure. Would he come to the gathering? Would he disrupt the newfound confidence that had taken root so firmly within Hank? There was an urge to avoid confrontation altogether, to shield himself from the raw nerves that Buck provoked. But Hank immediately recognized that avoidance was not an option anymore. The very notion made him feel weak. He had battled too long with his insecurities, and the only way out was through. The afternoon slid into evening, the rain still pouring down as shadows danced on the walls. He picked up the phone, the weight of it heavy in his hand. This call had been on his mind since the idea formed. It was time to confront Buck, not in anger, but in a manner that demanded respect. A conversation to lock eyes and unearth truths they both had buried too deep. With each ring, Hank felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with a pulse of apprehension. Would Buck even answer? What would he say? The idea of vulnerability threatened to paralyze him, yet the urge to reclaim his narrative propelled him forward. The phone clicked, and when Buck's voice grumbled through the line, Hank felt the ground beneath him sway. Yeah? Buck sounded as disinterested as ever, and the casual dismissiveness ignited an ember of anger within Hank. Buck, it's Hank. I want to talk. We need to clear the air before my gathering. The words came out more assertively than he anticipated, surprising himself. He heard silence on the other end, the kind that froze time. That silence morphed into a non-committal hum, an acknowledgement, nothing more. Sure, we can talk, but I'm busy, got work to do. Work is always going to be there, Buck, Hank responded, his heart pounding with the shift in tone. I'm more than your old friend. We can't keep ignoring our past like nothing happened. A long sigh came from Buck, tension palpable through the line. Fine. When and where? The floodgates opened, a moment of shared vulnerability suspended in time. Let's make it at the diner tomorrow evening before the gathering. As Hank hung up, he felt an exhilarating mix of dread and relief. He had faced Buck, standing tall and refusing to accept treatment that left him feeling small. That night, as he lay in bed, he grasped that this moment was a pivotal step not only for his own healing, but for instilling boundaries. He would confront the past, to skillfully navigate it. It was no longer about letting it define him. Sleep eluded him, thoughts of the gathering intertwining with the potential confrontation with Buck. Would he collapse beneath old tales, or emerge reborn? A sliver of hope flickered within him, reminding him of the person he wanted to become. Tomorrow would demand everything of Hank, but he knew now that he was ready. With the dawn would come a reckoning, testing not just his resolve but who he truly was without the chains of his past. Would he seize the opportunity to redefine himself without Buck's shadow looming? As dawn broke, spilling light into his anxious heart, he knew he was on the precipice of transformation, prepared to take the leap. The sun rose reluctantly, casting a muted glow through Hank's bedroom window. Each ray felt like a challenge, a spotlight on the impending confrontation that weighed heavily on his mind. He turned over in his bed, the remnants of sleep a looming temptation, yet he understood that staying in bed would only delay the inevitable reckoning. Today was pivotal, and he couldn't afford to shy away from that truth. With a deliberate resolve, he swung his legs off the bed and planted his feet on the cool floor. He grabbed his notebook, pages still adorned with unfinished thoughts, and sat cross-legged on the floor. This was a ritual that had become essential, a warm-up for his impending dialogue with Buck. He let the ink flow, allowing his fears and hopes to manifest on paper. What do I truly want from this conversation? He scribbled, the question pressing but liberating. The answer was simple yet profound: clarity and respect. After a quick shower, Hank dressed in a worn flannel, something familiar that grounded him amidst the uncertainty. He glanced in the mirror, taking in the man staring back. Not the victim Buck had crafted from his insecurities, but someone determined to reclaim his own narrative. There was no more hiding behind the masks that had muffled him. Today, he would assert his worth. He made a mental note to arrive early at the diner, an opportunity to prepare himself, to center his thoughts. The chilly air outside matched the tension that coiled within him. As he walked, he marveled at the ordinary world continuing around him. The everyday sounds of cars passing and birds chirping felt like echoes of freedom, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside. Arriving at the diner, Hank chose a booth in the far corner, a place where he could visibly see the entrance while cloaked in shadows. He ordered coffee, the steam curling up, its warmth a comfort against the persistent chill in his bones. With each sip, he tried to ground himself, recalling moments of confidence, the time he had given a speech to a group of colleagues, nervously but successfully. He had owned that room, infused with authenticity. If he could do that, he could also confront Buck. As the minutes dragged on, his mind wandered, tumbling through past encounters with Buck, recalling the insidious way the man had belittled him during moments of vulnerability. Was Buck's disinterest an unknowingly damaging habit? Or was it calculated? The thoughts played a haunting melody, but Hank shook them aside. The past would not call the shots today. He glanced at the clock, 30 minutes past. Anxiety fluttered in his stomach, but determination tempered that fear. Buck's reputation for being late was notorious. He had always taken his time, showing up when it suited him. Yet, today felt different. Hank had already made the first move. He was the one reclaiming control. Finally, the door swung open and Buck strode in, his demeanor unbothered, a casual arrogance trailing him like a shadow. Hank's heart raced. Would this encounter turn sour, or could he keep his newfound assertiveness intact? As Buck slid into the opposite booth, the air thickened. "You wanted to talk," he stated flatly, eyes darting around the diner, seemingly uninterested in Hank. The moment hung suspended, an opportunity presented like an unopened gift. Hank steadied his breath, ready to confront the ghosts that had stalked him for too long. "Yes, I do want to talk," he said, feeling the weight of the words solidifying his resolve. "And I need you to listen." The determination in his voice pierced through Buck's nonchalance, causing him to stop and actually meet Hank's gaze. It was as if time slowed, and Hank realized with startling clarity that this was not just a conversation. This was a reckoning, a test of everything he had been evolving into. But as he prepared to lay bare his truths, a flicker of doubt nagged at him. Would he find the courage to speak freely, to demand respect? Or would he find himself slipping back into an old, familiar discomfort? "Let's be real, Hank," Buck said, a challenge lacing his tone. "You think this is going to change anything?" Hank clenched his fists under the table, the spark of defiance ignited. "This isn't about changing anything for you. It's about me finding my voice." In that moment, the diner faded away, leaving only them. Two men poised on the edge of confrontation in a battle far beyond the mere words being exchanged. Would Hank's courage prevail against Buck's dismissiveness? Would he finally break the cycle that had long held him captive? The stage was set, and Hank understood that this was only the beginning of his journey towards self-definition. Where it would lead was still to be discovered, but he was ready to step into that uncharted territory, regardless of the outcome. Hank's heart thudded in his chest, a steady drumbeat against the silence that enveloped them. Buck's smug demeanor, the way he leaned back with arms crossed, made it clear he expected this to be yet another routine encounter, one where Hank would re-entrench himself into the old role of the submissive listener. The tension grew palpable, and Hank's resolve tightened around him like a noose, urging him to push back against the shadows of his doubt. "I've thought a lot about our past," Hank began, fighting against the lump rising in his throat. Just saying the words sparked something in him, a flicker of the confidence he knew he could wield. "About how our conversations always felt suffocating for me." Buck raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And? You've been dragging me here for this? A pity party?" "No," Hank replied more firmly than he felt. "This isn't about pity. It's about truth. And I want you to hear mine." As he spoke, the gravity of the moment pressed into him, challenging his limitations. What if he could finally tell Buck how his dismissive comments had ravaged his self-esteem for years? What if he could reveal the hurt? "This isn't just about us," Hank continued. "It's about how you've made me feel undervalued, that I'm less when we're together, that my opinions and feelings don't matter." The words tasted foreign, yet liberating, like discovering a deeply buried treasure within himself. Buck shifted, an indecipherable expression passing across his face, but Hank pressed on, emboldened. No, I need you to know that I am more than your punching bag, that my voice matters, and I won't let you dismiss me any longer." For the first time, Buck's facade cracked. He uncrossed his arms, his confidence wavering. "You think this changes anything? That I'm just going to sit here and take it?" Hank took a breath, the intensity of the moment crystallizing his thoughts. Part of him screamed to retreat, to slip back into the safety of silence, yet determination surged through him. Maybe not in the way you think, but it changes everything for me. I'm altering the narrative I've allowed you to write about me. This had turned into more than a mere confrontation. It became an assertion of Hank's identity and an exploration of a new relationship with himself. Buck stared at him, eyes narrowing as if reassessing the man before him. You're different today. What's changed? Hank smiled faintly, heart racing. I realize that I've let fear guide me for too long. Today, I'm choosing to be authentic. With those words, he felt a spark of freedom, a release of pressure that had built up over years. Authentic? Good luck with that, Buck retorted, though the edge of challenge in his voice felt less mocking now. A wave of exhilaration coursed through Hank. This was not just about standing up to Buck, it was a declaration of independence from all the ways he had weakened himself. You misunderstand. It's not about luck. It's about acknowledging my worth, even in the face of you trying to undermine it. From now on, I'm committed to protecting my voice. Hank's declaration hung in the air like a live wire. The power had tipped, and he felt empowered to navigate the tremors of doubt still swimming in his mind. Would Buck capitulate? Would this new Hank be strong enough even if he didn't? He steeled himself, knowing that he had taken a transformative step. As Buck's expression shifted into one of annoyance mixed with something far more disconcerting, a flicker of respect or perhaps acknowledgement, Hank knew he had ignited a crack in the familiar pattern. The confrontation had shifted from a straightforward challenge to a battlefield of wills, one where anything could still unfold. What would Buck's next move be? Would he lash out as Hank feared, or would this pushback be a catalyst for change in their dynamic? As another heartbeat passed, Hank realized that this meeting was just the spark, a risky endeavor to redefine who he was. The future felt laden with uncertainty, but each uncertain path he envisioned ignited his determination to forge ahead. The conversation was only beginning, and Hank was ready to delve even deeper. What would it mean to break free of everything he had once accepted? The next moment awaited him, a threshold of potential and peril. Hank took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the tension in the air shift momentarily as Buck sat up straighter, his crossed arms slowly falling to his sides. Would this mark a crucial inflection point for both of them? Hank's insides churned with a mix of hope and anxiety. He was standing on the precipice of change, daring to lean into the unknown. There's more? Hank pressed, his voice steady as he leaned slightly forward. He sensed Buck's guarded demeanor, like a fortress built brick by brick from years of bitterness. He could see it now, a reflection of pent-up insecurities so deep-rooted they formed an impenetrable wall. I've let you dictate the way I see myself and my future for far too long. Buck's expression tightened, a mask of annoyance sparking back to life. What do you mean? Dictate. You think I'm your master? No, Hank said, a fire igniting in his chest. But your words have acted as a mirror, reflecting a version of me I never wanted to see. A version that feels small, silent, and afraid. He watched as Buck's eyes narrowed, the tension building as if they were teetering on the edge of a broader conversation. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a dialogue unfolding, one that could lead to newfound understanding or deepen the chasms of their past. What's it going to take for you to understand? Buck barked, his irritation not just at Hank but perhaps at himself for losing control of the conversation. You really think you can change things between us? I don't know, Hank admitted, vulnerability creeping into his voice. But I need to try. I recognize fear doesn't serve me anymore. I think I deserve better. Better respect, better treatment, better relationships. And that starts with me. Here. Now. Something in Hank's words hung there, like a bridge forming between the life he knew and the one he yearned to build. Buck's eyes flicked to the floor, a fracture of contemplation breaking through the aggressive facade he often portrayed. Hank seized this moment of pause, feeling a surge of adrenaline fueling his resolve. What if your responses shape this journey? Hank probed softly. What if I didn't exist just to react to what you say? What if I'm a fully formed individual, and it's on me to own my story, regardless of your opinion? Buck looked up, eyes wide, as if Hank was offering him a chance to reconsider everything. But would he take it? Would he allow a chink in the armor? Hank had nothing left to lose. After years of fading into the background, he was ready to embrace the daunting power of trying. The silence thickened as Buck processed Hank's words. As Hank surveyed the intensity of the emotional battlefield he had engaged in, he felt both fear and excitement ripple through him, much like standing on the edge of a cliff. He could either plunge back into invisibility or soar into the freedom he knew lay on the other side of confronting Buck. What if I told you I would believe you if you had the guts to commit? Buck finally challenged, leaning forward slightly, intrigued despite himself. Hank's heart raced. A tiny flame of courage was kindling, transforming doubt into a fierce determination. I'd tell you I'll do more than commit. I'll realign my life with the truth of who I am. It's not just about you believing in me, Buck. It's about me believing in myself. An unexpected quiet enveloped them, an open space where possibilities hung forgotten. It felt like they were caught mid-argument aboard a shifting tide, each pondering a change they hadn't anticipated. And what if I don't like this new version of you? Buck's question sliced through the silence, exposing his vulnerability even as he masked it with defiance. Then we can have that discussion too, Hank replied, surprised at his own capacity for resolve fueling his voice. But I refuse to go back to who I was. You can either acknowledge this or continue acting as if I'm not here. With those final words, the air felt charged with a heightened sense of urgency and challenge. There was an unspoken understanding that, regardless of how Buck responded, this was a pivotal moment where Hank could delve further into the exploration of himself, an opportunity to redefine everything he had long accepted. Hank stood among the fray, ready to confront whatever came next, realizing that true growth was both thrilling and frightening. As he prepared for Buck's next response, he felt the undertow of anticipation. Could this exchange mark the beginning of a significant transformation, or would it expose deeper fissures between them? The weight of the moment pressed heavily on Hank's shoulders, unsettling yet intoxicating. This was a defining moment in his life, and he had no intention of backing down. But as Buck's expression hardened, Hank braced himself for the clash that was sure to come. The questions lingered. Would he unleash newfound fury, or would there be a glimmer of reconciliation amid the shadows? As the seconds dragged on, tension vibrating within the room, Hank steeled himself for whatever Buck might fling back at him. The uncertainty was suffocating, yet it held the key to what lay beyond. His mind raced, swirling with questions. Had he truly taken a step towards freedom? Or was this merely a reckless gamble that would leave him heartbroken? Maybe you don't get it, Buck finally replied, his voice gruff but laced with a hint of uncertainty. This isn't just about what you want. It affects me, too. Hank felt a flicker of understanding ignite in his chest. Buck's struggles often twisted their relationship into a battle of wills, each protecting their turf. Exactly, Buck. And I want us both to be truthful. No more games. He noticed a slight shift in Buck's posture. A dropping of the shoulders, perhaps, as if a burden was shifting. An inkling of hope lingered in Hank's heart. Could Buck be willing to open a door to conversation? Fine. What does that look like for you? Buck challenged, his tone softening, inviting Hank into the storm of their shared torment. Hank took a breath, focusing through the haze of fear and anticipation. It means being honest about where we stand, not just with each other, but within ourselves. I need to know if I matter, and if we can reshape this into something more productive, or if we'll just continue to sabotage one another. Silence enveloped them again, heavy and contemplative. There was power in Hank's words. He could sense it shifting the atmosphere, slowly but surely. What if I don't know how to stop? Buck murmured, the weight of his past surfacing. The vulnerability cracked through the bitter exterior Hank often encountered. Then let's figure it out together, Hank replied. We don't have to know everything right now. We can grow. A small nod from Buck sealed the promise, a flicker of alignment, But the challenge loomed larger than ever. They stood at the edge of a precipice, one foot in their old, protective facades, and another yearning for new ground. Hank felt a rush of resolve fueling his next words. This is about choice, yours and mine. We can choose to remain entrenched in our old patterns, or we can step into the murky waters of potential. I refuse to be a sidelined participant in my own life any longer. Buck shifted again, glancing away thoughtfully. Hank seized the moment to clarify his vision, weaving in his desire for professional and personal development, an aspiration not always within his reach, overshadowed by self-doubt. And that means I want to explore new opportunities. I've been considering applying to that management position at work. It's time I take ownership of my career, whether you support that or not. The implications of Hank's statement hung thick in the air. Buck's expression darkened. So just like that, you're leaving behind everything we built here? It doesn't have to mean that, Hank replied, his voice firm yet gentle. But I've spent too long waiting for your approval, letting it dictate my worth. I can create a life that reflects who I am, and I hope you can find room for that in your own journey. A mixture of emotions flickered across Buck's face. Confusion, anger, and an inkling of acknowledgement fought for explanation. Hank felt it was a moment of reckoning for both of them, a catalyst toward deeper understanding or another descent into chaos. How can I trust you won't bail when things get tough? Buck asked, skepticism creeping back into his voice. Trust isn't built overnight, and it requires effort from both of us. Hank's heart raced as he recognized the weight of his own vulnerability. He wouldn't turn back now. I can prove that I'm ready to invest in both my life and our relationship. It will take work, but I believe we can figure it out together. Hank realized he was no longer the passive participant hoping for change. The responsibility was now in his hands, a good kind of pressure, empowering rather than smothering. As the silence drummed on, Buck finally met Hank's gaze. The cautiously simmering challenge hung in the balance, and with a deep sense of unease and exhilaration, Hank sensed this could mark the start of something transformative, or a decisive moment of rejection that would push him further into the unknown. Regardless of the outcome, Hank stood ready, brimming with newfound self-awareness and determination. But could Buck process this sudden shift? Would he embrace the opportunity floating before them, or would he create another wall of doubt? Before Buck could respond, the door swung open with the suddenness of a tempest, casting a shadow on their interaction. Hank turned to see who had burst in, heart pounding once more as uncertainty flooded back. Would this new presence upend the fragile ground they were starting to tread together? The interruption came in the form of a boisterous group of local patrons, their laughter cutting through the thick air that had settled in the diner. They climbed in, shaking off raindrops like they were shedding their burdens, and the moment was lost just as quickly as it had begun. Hank felt the shift, both in the mood of the room and the fragile connection he was forging with Buck. Would they retreat into silence once more, or could this burst of energy reignite their dialogue? Buck leaned back, arms crossing stiffly once more, the instinct to protect himself returning with the influx of distraction. Hank watched him closely, fighting against the tide of disappointment that threatened to overwhelm him. Was this really the moment to initiate change? Was Buck even willing to strip away the brambles of his own defenses? Come on, one of the newcomers cajoled as they took a booth nearby, grinning wide. Join us for some fun. It's a night for laughter, not brooding. Hank caught Buck's eye, an unspoken challenge lingering between them. This was a pivotal moment laden with potential. He leaned in, lowering his voice just below the raucous chatter. Are we going to engage with what matters, or let this take us off course? Buck scoffed, even as a hint of a smile tugged at his lips. What's it to you? You're the one getting all sentimental. Hank felt his core steady as he pushed through the wall Buck often erected. I want to engage with the truth. Can't we mesh laughter with authenticity? The corners of Buck's mouth twitched, the gravity of their earlier exchange balancing precariously against the intrusiveness of the group. This was a crossroads. Hank could feel it in the depths of his heart. All right. Buck finally relented, now leaning forward in a way that signaled real interest. If I'm honest, I think you've changed today. I guess we'll see how far that gets you. A surge of warmth filled Hank's chest. Let's try it. Let's embrace being vulnerable together, even if it means wrestling with old ghosts in new light. For the first time, their laughter intertwined, melding with the raucous cheer of the diners around them. Hank caught glimmers of camaraderie, not just with Buck, but with the laughter drifting between the tables. Maybe he didn't need to conquer Buck to establish the relationship they both needed. Rather, maybe it was about learning to step lightly on the delicate dance of vulnerability. The group near their booth erupted in a wave of silly banter, and Buck turned toward them with a trace of apprehension, almost fearful of exposing himself. Hank felt the currents of possibility weaving between them. I believe in us, Buck. I think we can encompass those complexities. Buck smirked, the kind of smirk that hinted at a friendship buried beneath years of rivalry and misunderstanding. Yeah? Then maybe it's time we show the town that we're more than what they think. The idea etched itself into Hank's mind, an impromptu gathering in the diner, lightening the mood but also allowing genuine connection. Let's make the most of this. We'll invite everyone here for a round of stories right now, he exclaimed, the energy swelling within him. Buck's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but the challenge hung in the air like an enticing invitation waiting to be accepted. Are you serious? He asked, incredulous. Deadly. It's a moment for us, Buck. No better way to illustrate growth than putting it into practice. Hank could feel the spark of possibility igniting in his own chest, emboldening him in ways he'd only dreamed of before. With an unexpected ease, Buck joined Hank, leaning over the partition and addressing their newfound friends. Hey, you guys want to join us in a storytelling contest instead of your regular banter? An unexpected burst of applause erupted from the group. Hank felt the walls that had cradled their rivalry fragment into something more organic. As laughter erupted alongside playful storytelling, it became evident that growth didn't always stem from confrontation. Sometimes it flourished alongside resilience and connection. Hank watched Buck step into the role of a leader, guiding their friends through shared anecdotes that resonated with old wounds, new beginnings brewing in their candor. Hank found himself enveloped in warmth, submerged in the thrill of realizing that they could both redefine their relationship together, not just as rivals but as allies. Over the evening, every laugh revealed progress, every brightly spun tale a step toward mutual understanding. Hank felt liberated from self-imposed shackles and testaments of inadequacy, once suffocated under Buck's disdain. They had transformed this space into a platform where they could explore not only their connection, but also who they were becoming as individuals. As the stories flowed and laughter drifted into the night, Hank felt the swell of something deeper, a communion threading through the glowing energy enveloping them. Buck was no longer just a remnant of the past. He stood as a doorway to new pathways, raw and authentic, waiting to be traversed side by side. By the time the diner began to empty, Hank felt the warmth of a new narrative coursing through him. A narrative where he was an active participant, no longer relegated to the sidelines of doubt. I guess we can't truly rewrite old stories without facing them together, he said, a satisfied smile illuminating his face. Buck nodded, his expression softening as he recognized their shared evolution. You've made it kind of fun, haven't you? Yeah, life's far too short for anything else, Hank replied, savoring the first tastes of honest connection through shared laughter and resilience. As they exited the diner, Hank felt lighter than he had in years, grounded not by fear of judgment but by the foundations of authenticity and mutual respect he had finally begun to build. He stepped onto the rain-soaked sidewalk, watching the sky disperse into a canvas of stars, feeling ready to embrace the warmth of truly redefining who he was destined to become. This wasn't just a transition for him. It marked the start of a new chapter filled with possibilities, courage, and the energy to confront growth side by side. Hank Matthews was no longer a lone rancher. He was on the brink of dismounting into a newfound existence, grounded in connection, purpose, and reinvention. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now. To feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.